The text, Psalm 121. Hear now the word of the Lord. I lift my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth.
He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore.
This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Easy, miss. I've got you. You've got me. Who's got you? Anybody know what film that's from? It's old. Not old to some of you, but it's from that film, the 78 version of Superman with Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder. And the scene takes place, that quote occurs in a scene where Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder, is falling out of a window or something, skyscraper, and of course Superman flies in and catches her in midair, and he says, "Easy, miss, I've got you," and she says, "Yeah, you've got me, but who's got you? Who's got you?" That's a good question to ask, isn't it? It's a good question. If you are a parent, sometime in your parental experience, you've said that to your child, haven't you? I've got you. Perhaps you did that at a playground when you're kind of holding your child up. I've got you, don't worry, I've got you. Or maybe you said it when you were teaching her to swim. Come to me, I've got you. Or maybe when you're teaching him to ride a bicycle. Come on, I've got you. You've got this. Maybe you said it in the doctor's office when your doctor is giving your child a shot. I've got you. Maybe you've said it when you're dropping off your child at college. And you look at them before you leave and say, "Don't worry, I've got you." I got to face that one, so that one's getting a little too close for me right now. I'm looking at that one this fall. It's one of the greatest gifts a parent can give to their child, right? To be able to provide that unconditional support, that sense of a safety net, to be able to say to your child, "I've got you," to let them know that someone's got them. It is such a gift. It's good to know that because sometimes in life, you feel like you are going to fall. Even as adults, right? We feel that often, like maybe there's nothing beneath us. And you may be feeling that right now. Right now, as you are dealing with chronic pain. Or if you're dealing with the uncertainty of the future before you, whether it's your job or your health, or you're battling some disease that has you worn out, fatigued, exhausted. As you deal with anxiety or fear over something in your life, as you deal with strained interpersonal relationships, that sense of falling. If you feel that way this morning, I've got some encouragement for you. I love to preach sermons like this because this psalm and this sermon is meant to encourage you. It's meant to say to you, like a parent to a child, "I've got you." Except the person saying that is the eternal and triune God. He's saying to us in this psalm, "I've got you." My sermon is very simple this morning. It is basically one sentence made up of 3 clauses. The 3 clauses are my 3 points. So let's look at that as they emerge in Psalm 121, Christ our keeper. 3 points here, 3 clauses. And the first clause is this. If you look at Psalm 121, the first clause is this: life is a journey. Life is a journey. Psalm 121 is one of the songs of ascent There are 15 of them in the Psalter out of the 150 Psalms. And these occur bunched up together between Psalm 120 and Psalm 134. And they are all thematically unified by this theme of travel, of a pilgrimage, of a journey. These are songs of people, pilgrims, going to and coming from the temple of the Lord. And these are their songs that they sing on a journey. You could think of it, if you will, as kind of like the Bible's version of a road trip mixtape, right? These were the songs, the playlist that they had to go to and from the temple, from the worship of the Lord. And you could see those examples of that travel theme in the words of the psalm as it was read this morning. As you see it in your Bible, you can see and sense that sense of motion in the psalm, of movement in the psalm, that we're going somewhere, that there is this momentum to it. It begins right at the first verse, right? I look unto the hills. My eyes turn to the hills. You get the sense of someone about to embark on a journey. They're looking at the horizon ahead of them. There's motion there. There's momentum. Verse 2, He will not let your foot be moved. The pilgrim is concerned about keeping her feet on this journey, right? She's moving forward. There's momentum there. In verse 6, the sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. It's not only a journey through space, right? It's a journey through time. There's motion through time, day and night. There's this movement, momentum. Verse 8, the Lord will keep your going out and your coming in. These are words of a traveler. These are words of one on a journey, momentum through space and time. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. That, of course, is Robert Frost's famous poem, The Road Not Taken. It speaks about that. It's like this psalm. It's a journey. Life is a journey. It's a series of comings and goings, of motion through space and through time. And it's always a constant, right? That motion. You can't put your finger in the same river again. Things are moving along. That is what life is like. Last night, Michelle and I watched the film Nomadland, and it talks about a woman and a group of people, these modern nomads. She's living out of her van, and it's a movie that brings that sense of constant movement, of going places from one place to another. And although most of us don't live that kind of life, we are really always in motion. We're always moving. We're on a journey going through seasons and times, and through time and through space. It's a series of transitions. That's what life is. From childhood to adolescence to adulthood to middle age to retirement to senior life. Life is a journey where you're always moving, always transitioning. We get this song. That's what the psalmist was doing. And in that journey of life, there are choices to be made. And like the poem from Frost says, you can't quite see around the bend. What if I go that way? What's down that way? That's what life is like. It's a journey where you're not sure what's beyond the bend. There's a thing in financial analysis called a Monte Carlo analysis. And what basically it is you kind of use it for retirement planning, things like that. You look at somebody's assets, you look at how long they live, you look at what they're going to spend, you look at market returns, and you plug it all into a computer, and it runs 1,000 iterations, and it kind of tells you, okay, like 85% of the time you're going to be okay. There's that 15%, right? There's those tails, there's those possibilities, those iterations, and you wonder to yourself, what lived experience will I have? Which of those iterations will be my life? You don't know, because life is a journey and you can't quite see beyond the bend. The psalmist in 121 here, this pilgrim, she's not so different from you and from me, right? Like us, she is on a journey. She's going somewhere. And that's our first clause. Life is a journey. That's what it is. Our second clause is this. Sometimes that journey gets scary. Life is a journey, and sometimes that journey gets scary. That's true, right? Bilbo says this to Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. It's true, right? Traveling, journeys can be scary. They can be dangerous. I mean, there are two types of people in this world. There are adventurous travelers, and there are anxious travelers. I know you. I know this congregation pretty well. We have a lot of adventurous travelers in our congregation, people who love to go. They just love to be on the move. They love new experiences. They're free spirit. They want to go around the world. They don't mind travel at all. They're adventurous travelers. They're happy. They can't wait to get out their door. And they're going nuts right now, right, as they're more restricted in their life. But then there's the other group of travelers, the anxious travelers, people like me. I'm in this category of life. I mean, you got to pack the suitcase, then there's the drive, or worse, the flight, the TSA, then people. You travel, they're everywhere. Lines, I don't like to wait in lines. You go to a hotel room, bed bugs. Got to get out that ultraviolet light, make sure that's clean. Disinfect the remote, people. Wipe that sucker down. I don't sleep well when I travel, right? I get all messed up. I'm more of the anxious traveler type. How about you in your life, right? There really are these two different groups of people. Adventurous travelers and anxious travelers. And the psalmist was clearly in the anxious category. I mean, it hits you right in the face when you start this psalm. That's kind of why I had Michelle and I read this, because there's really two voices in the psalm. And at the beginning, it's the pilgrim speaking about the journey, right? Looking at it, packing the suitcase, thinking about what's ahead of him. And he says this, he says, I lift my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? It's a question of anxiety. I'm looking out there. How am I going to get through this? Who's going to help me do this? The traveler here in the psalm, she looks out at those mountains, and they're big, and they're scary, and they're troublesome. Some commentators have looked at this psalm and said, they look at the hills as being, well, that's the place of the Lord, right? Things that are higher, they're closer to heaven, these are places of worship, so this is an encouraging thing. No, that's really not it at all. The mountains were scary places because they hid marauders and they hid robbers, right? If you tried to walk through them, they had crags and crevices. You could fall. You could see it in the psalm about losing my feet, right? Losing my step, falling into a crevice or into a crag and dying, right? They're dangerous paths. There was great concern. The hills were the places of the pagan gods. Those are the high places of the pagan gods. I mean, in the hills there be dragons. You don't want to go there. No Israelite wanted to go there. This is a scary prospect. And it was scary during the day because you could get heat stroke, right? This is what the psalmist talks about the being struck by the sun during the day. And it was scary at night because at this time of the world, right, in the ancient Near East, the moon was a scary thing, and you thought it had certain effects on you. We have certain legacies of that. We have the word lunacy, right, coming from that idea. Moonstruck. It was that type of thing. It was a scary place to be, day or night. Traveling was scary. Scary for the psalmist, and it's scary for us. The psalmist was anxious with good reason, because life gets scary sometimes. And we get that, right? Has life ever gotten scary for you? You go along and it's all kicks and giggles, and then stuff gets real. Right? It's almost like you live in this trance, and then something happens and it wakes you up to the reality of life. It gets real when they kind of slide you into that MRI machine. And you hear those noises. And you're all alone. It gets real when you're waiting for the lab results. Waiting for that to pop up on your My Chart. It gets real when you're at the bedside of a child who's sick and you're praying for them and you're crying at their bedside. It gets real when someone you love walks out on you. It leaves you. Life gets real when you throw dirt on the casket of someone you love. That's real, and it's scary. Life can be that. I mean, have you ever looked at something that you have been called to go through? You look at it just like those mountains, right? I'm looking at it. I can't get through that. How am I going to do it? Who's going to help me? I can't get through that. It creates anxiety. It creates concern in me. And I know some of you are right there right now. You're looking at those mountains, those scary mountains. You've got that journey you have to walk, and you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to do this? Where will my help come from? And now my life has changed in oh so many ways. My independence seems to vanish in the haze. But every now and then I feel so insecure. I know that I just need you like I've never done before. Help. Right? The Beatles, they got this song. They got it. We feel like that. When you look at those scary mountains on the journey of life, you recognize that you are fragile, that you need help, that you need somebody. And as the Beatles put it, not just anybody. Life is a journey. And sometimes that journey gets real and it gets scary. Now, this brings me to my third clause, the good one. The third clause in this little sentence, in this little sermon, is, but God's got you. Life is a journey. Sometimes that journey gets scary, comma, but God's got you. But God's got you. You see, the core promise of this psalm, what it really is trying to convey, its message to us, is that for the believer, there is a safety net. For the believer, there's a safety net. If you fall, God's got you. That's what this psalm is about. He will catch you. He will catch you. That's what this psalm is all about. That's why I call this psalm the Willie Mays psalm. Now, for those of you who don't know who Willie Mays is, first, shame on you. You should know who Willie Mays is. He was a baseball player, an outfielder for the San Francisco Giants, a Hall of Famer. He hit 660 dingers. For those who don't know what that is, it's a home run. And the Say Hey Kid, as they called him, the Say Hey Kid, he could play center field. Oh, how he could play center field. And his most famous play is simply known as the catch. It's the catch. It's the platonic ideal of a catch. It is the catch. September 29th, 1954, Game 1 of the 54 World Series. San Francisco's playing Cleveland. It's the 8th inning. The score is tied 2-2, and Cleveland's Vic Wertz gets up and he smacks a fly ball to center field, and Mays starts running it down. It's over his head. It's clearly over his head. And you see him scurrying. You see number 24 on his back. And he's running after it. He's chasing it down. And then he reaches up and he makes this over-the-shoulder catch. This amazing catch. The catch. And then he has the presence of mind to wheel around and to shoot to second base to hold up the runners from tagging. It's an amazing play. The Giants go on and they win the game 5-2 in extra innings. The catch. That's what's happening in this psalm. That's what's happening here. Our traveler, our pilgrim is anxious, afraid. From her perspective, the ball is going to drop, right? I'm not going to get through this. I mean, it looks like the ball is going to fall. It's game over, man. Game over, right? This is not going to work out for me. But then out of nowhere, someone sweeps in like Willie Mays, right? Like Superman catching Lois Lane. Someone sweeps in and makes the catch. And that's what's going on here. Makes that over-the-shoulder catch. You see, I noted earlier, our pilgrim is looking at those scary hills and asks that question. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where will my help come? From where will my help come? And then she kind of makes this declaration of trust, right? She says, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth, and she's trying to convince herself of this. She's doing what we all do. She knows the good theology. Right? I'm in this trouble. I'm looking at this journey. It's pretty scary. I know the Lord's my place of help, but I'm not quite sure about it. I get it here, but I'm not sure I get it here. I'm still afraid. I'm still struggling. And then what happens is Willie Mays comes in and makes the catch. There's another voice in the psalm. That's why we read that together this morning, because verses 1 and 2 is the pilgrim speaking of anxiety and nervousness and uncertainty. And then another voice in verses 3 through 8 speaks back to her. And we can call that voice Vin Scully. That's kind of like the Vin Scully. Vin Scully, you should know who he is too. He's the voice of the Los Angeles Dodgers Hall of Fame baseball announcer, right? He called the catch. And that's what verses 3 through 8 are. It's the priest calling God's catch of the pilgrim, saying to the pilgrim, God's got you. You're not going to fall. The priest says to the traveler, God won't let your foot slip. God's got you. He never sleeps, you know. He doesn't even slumber. He's got you. Are you afraid of the sun and the moon? He'll be your shade day and night. He's got you covered. He's got you. Are you afraid of the evil in those hills? He's got you. He's got you when you go out, and He's got you when you come in. He's got you now, and He's got you evermore. He's got you in space, and He's got you in time. He's got you. And beloved, He's got you. This psalm is for you. This cry, this comfort, this encouragement, it's for you. These words are spoken to you through the Scriptures, whatever those scary mountains are for you. Wherever the Lord is leading you, He's got you. You still have to walk through it. Right? That's not the deal. The deal isn't like, no, you don't have to do it anymore. No, you got to walk through it. But you are not alone. And you will not fall because He's got you. That's the message of this psalm. 6 times in this psalm is the word keep. That is a word that speaks to being guarded, watched over, caught. He's got you. It comes, you hear it in the Aaronic blessing, right? The Lord bless you and keep you. God says, I got you. He's a really good center fielder, even better than Willie Mays. He says, I got you. And He punctuated that point in redemptive history through the greatest over-shoulder catch of all time, right? Jesus Christ. This is how much I love you. This is how much I am going to provide you certainty. I will give you my Son, my only Son, to show you I've got you. Christ, our keeper. He's got us. Let me tell you an embarrassing story about myself to illustrate this. Most parents, go through that thing where they have to put their kid on the school bus the first time. It's kind of nerve-wracking or whatever. So in our life, we didn't really have to do that when our kids were young, because Michelle worked at the school and where the kids went, and so she took them to school. I never had to deal with that moment of, the tear-filled moment until my daughter went to high school. This is an embarrassing story, I have to admit. So she's going to take the bus, and she's going to take the bus home for the first time. Get off the bus, go into the house, unlock the door. I realize it's ridiculous. I shouldn't worry about this. She's in 9th grade, right? But I did. I was worried about it. And so the first day she had to do this, I was in my law office, and I knew the kind of time. I knew what time the bus was going to be there. And I shot out of my law office, got in my car, drove home. I went into the church parking lot across the street from my street so I could get a line of sight on my driveway. And I waited for that bus to come. And I watched her get off that bus. She didn't know I was there. I watched her get off the bus. I watched her go into the house and get safely inside. Then I went back. She never knew I was there until I told her later on. But I was there because I wanted her to know that I got her, right? That's what you do. You do that for people you love. You do that for your kids. That's what God does for us. And sometimes we're not even aware of it. But He's there. He's watching. He's keeping. He's making sure you will get through the journey. He's got you, beloved. Life is a journey. Sometimes that journey gets really scary. But God's got you. And Jesus says no one can snatch you from His hand. That's what this psalm is about. And I hope that encourages you this morning. Let's pray. Oh Lord, I do pray for the people in our congregation and anybody who might be listening to this who is struggling, who is looking at something formidable and scary. Someone who has to take a step and they're not sure if the ground's going to hold. I pray, oh Lord, that you would reveal yourself to them. That they would know the hope and the promise and the encouragement of this psalm. They would know as they go on that journey with all of its uncertainties that you are with them and that you've got them. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.